It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022. And of course, the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate political commentator. Yes, it's me, ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Uribe. Hoping you all had a wonderful weekend. Happy August to all of you. And certainly I appreciate you tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so here on Facebook Live via StreamYard, and of course on the Jersey First YouTube page. Of course, make sure you like Jersey First TV on Facebook, follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Jersey First TV. Of course, check out yours truly on Instagram and Twitter. It's the same handle, at No Filter Uribe. That's at No Filter, Uribe. And of course, make sure you like Real Talk on Facebook as well. Check out all of my episodes at www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, the number one, st.org. And certainly sharing is caring, ladies and gentlemen, as we like to do every single week here on the program. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Had a great time on Saturday, and Kate May speaking at a great Brexit conference, collaborating with fellow conservatives. So that was really, really entertaining. And of course, it was just joyous and festive, to say the least. So appreciate seeing everybody out there, such as Bill Spadia, State Senator Michael Testa, other legislators as well, State Senator Edward Durr as well. So it was nice to talk to people that I'm a fan of and to talk to people that are a fan of me. So that's always a good thing. And of course, yeah, you know what? Let me keep bragging a little bit as my New York Yankees. Yes, that's great. Still in first place. Let me have a little tea here. That's right. Still in first place. Still with the best record in baseball. And I get it. Last week, we got a little humbled. I know the team in Queens is celebrating with their July championship, but still there's plenty of baseball to be played, and I'm hoping some meaningful baseball will be played in the Bronx later on this October. Stay tuned, folks, because at the end of the show, as always, I will select this week's winner of the worst journalist in the state of New Jersey. There's always a lot to choose from, but here's a spoiler alert. Yes, once again, it's somebody from Insider NJ, and folks, if you've been following this show, you know exactly why. But first, ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons this show continues to do well with exceptional traffic is not just because of you, my loyal viewing audience, but because of the outstanding guests that I bring you every single week, exclusives you don't see anywhere else, and conversations, dialogues, and really, just interactions that you don't see on other media programs in the Garden State, either on the right or on the left. And I'm proud to bring you that every single week. And this week, I am proud to bring you a columnist from the Star-Ledger, a guy I'm a huge fan of, folks, and I know you are too. He's the great Paul Mulshine joining us here tonight on Real Talk. Paul, how are you?
How you doing?
It's good to have you on, man. Appreciate it. Again, I'm a big fan of your work, Paul, and I know you're someone that probably isn't as conservative as I am, because I'm very openly conservative, but it must be a challenge to be a conservative, or at least somewhat of a conservative, work at the Star-Ledger, right?
Well, anywhere in the mainstream media, the conservative point of view just isn't really heard, except for like Fox and New York Post. But in general, there's this pack journalism where they decide what's acceptable, and everything, they call it, they come up with a name, white supremacist. Anybody they don't like is a white supremacist. Your guy could be black and they'll call him a white supremacist. I mean, they get certain labels, the cancel culture. If you fit in this category, you can't be heard from. And I'm opposed to all that.
Well, you know what? Again, Paul, I'm a fan of that, and certainly I'm a fan of you, what you write about. And so let's get to it here. A great column yesterday, and it's been in the news cycle. It started really here organically in Hudson County with great news sites like HuddPost and the Hudson County View, and it's even gone up to the New York Post and Fox News last night. And it certainly centers around a controversy in Jersey City. Again, folks, if you don't follow Paul Mulshine on Twitter, please do so at Mulshine, and check his columns out on muckrack.com and look up Paul Mulshine there. Now, you titled it, Jersey City Crash Shows Bicyclists Think They're Above the Law. That has to change. I'm with you. And let me just read some excerpts here just from my notes here that you mentioned in the column. And quite frankly, one thing that really stood out for me about this was the idea that cyclists and even scooter riders now, who are becoming an absolute nuisance, I think for me, those are the ones that need to be called out just as much as any other behavior. And again, let me preface this by saying that Amy DeGees is a friend of mine. I've gotten a lot of flack locally in Hudson County because she's a regular on my podcast. So people are just saying, well, Fernando's not being objective. Fernando doesn't want to pile on. I don't feel the need to pile on, Paul. I'm just going to talk about this in a very objective manner. But I think that people are so focused on what happened with Amy DeGees, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it seems like bicyclists and scooter riders want to drive a ride around with absolute immunity. And I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of that. I'm glad you called it out.
Yeah, I'm from Ocean County. Yesterday, I was down in Beach Haven. There's a big sign on the entrance to Beach Haven saying, bicyclists, don't go against traffic, you'll get a ticket. I saw that in Lavalette. I mean, it's gotten so out of control with adding the motorized bicycles, the scooters, motorized scooters, even motorized unicycles, to the point where these towns are starting to have to react. And you see, I mean, all over the shore where I live, you see people just, they run stop signs. Like the other day, I was in Bayhead where I live. I'm driving down the beach road, and two girls just go right through a stop sign, almost ready to run into my car. And if they ran into you, you'd get the blame, but they're not looking, or they go against the one-way street and they don't even see the stop signs. And they often almost run the pedestrians over. And then I almost got run over by a rollerblader of all things. It's going the wrong way, And there's no control over this. And this Amy DeGees case seemed to me to be a perfect symbol of that.
I'm with you. And what's interesting, though, again, since this really went viral, the video, the CCTV camera about the accident itself, and we'll get to other CCTV footage that was released this weekend that certainly even adds more drama to this entire scenario. But, the idea that, and you point out, too, that the bicyclists, I get it. Listen, he has every right to feel victimized. Obviously, he was nearly killed. However, you got to be at least honest when you get interviewed literally 24 hours later after the incident. I mean, and this is one of the things that kind of makes it difficult to feel some empathy for bicyclists and scooter riders. Again, let me be very clear. I'm not trying to say it's the Wild Wild West. Let's just run over whoever we want. I'm not saying that. And I know you're not either. But the idea that at least, bro, get your facts straight. If you're going to talk about your incident and what happened to you, and now all of a sudden you're shying away from a camera or from a phone call, like, as you mentioned in your case.
Well, the HUD Post had an interview with him in which he said he had a green light. They had a diagram of a green light. They showed a video of just the light being green, shot long after the accident. And the video shouldn't be up any longer. It's just not right. It's inaccurate. I mean, I don't want to encourage people to sue for libel, but if I were her, I'd be that's libel. When you say when this guy says he had a green light and he had a red light, and that's really material to the case against her. And why this HUD Post doesn't correct it. They put a false graphic up there having her breaking the law. And she hit him. He came up so quick. Mario Andretti couldn't have avoided him because now there was an SUV illegally parked blocking both of their views. But when you watch the video, it came upon her so quick she couldn't even react. Now, it was 8 a.m. Usually when someone leaves the scene of a crash, it's because they're drunk. She wasn't drunk at 8 a.m. Now, we're not going to find her defense until it eventually goes to court. But if she's saying, I didn't know what happened, I was upset, I hit my head, I decided to go home and then find out, that's a pretty strong argument, and I don't know what, and also it's only misdemeanor charges. I mean, the crazy thing is they want her to resign. And, as Al Franken and as Andrew Cuomo found out, it's always a bad idea to resign.
Actually, you know what? That's a great point there. And folks, if you just joined us right now, it's 6:10 here on the East Coast on Jersey First TV via YouTube and also on Facebook Live via StreamYard. We are having some trouble with the StreamYard on Facebook Live, so bear with us. But join us here this week. He is a distinguished columnist from the Star Ledger. The great Paul Mulshine joined us here tonight on Real Talk. And Paul, the problem with this entire story is that it just seems to be getting worse by the day. Obviously, additional footage came out where she waited 6 hours to report it physically. Now, again, that's just going to help people pile on her worse People will start speculating. I have chosen not to do that. I don't want to do that. And again, I understand. I'm showing my bias. She's a good friend of mine. I don't want to sort of kick her while she's down. I don't believe in that. That's not the way I was raised. But it seems like that's very fashionable right now, not just in Hudson County media, but it seems like throughout the Garden State where, hey, if they can take a shot at someone, they're going to. I just think, you know what, let's let the process play itself out. That's what I've been saying consistently since it started, but I seem to be in the minority here.
Yeah, it strikes me that there's extreme I don't know Hudson County politics like you do, and I don't really care. It's like I'm not interested in the ins and outs of her father being, that county manager and all that stuff. I'm more interested in the picture of where all these new vehicles are going to fit in. And I don't know how you guys get around a place like Jersey City because it's insane. It was bad enough, 30 years ago when it was only cars. And now you're throwing all this stuff into the mix. It's like Paris, it's like I was down in Costa Rica last year, very much like that. Everybody in Costa Rica's got a 125 Honda. So there's all these cars, and then there's all these 125 Hondas shooting through and it's total chaos. I had to rent a car, just made a point of driving real slow because I don't want to hit anybody, But it is, and in Paris, it's like that. I mean, they're used to that. Paris has been crazy traffic forever. London has had crazy traffic forever. But this is new to us, this addition of all these vehicles, and it's a real issue that no one's addressing.
And it's interesting because when we talk about our municipalities not addressing them, I mean, this isn't just something in Hudson County where it's densely populated here. I mean, there are bike lanes surfacing everywhere, downtown Jersey City, parts of Greenville where this happened, the Jersey City Heights, Bergen County, even as you mentioned, even down by, Ocean and Monmouth County, respectively. It just seems like I get it, especially with gas prices due to the great leadership in the White House, obviously. People may want to ride their bicycles more, or maybe ride a scooter. That's all well and good. That's not my issue. My issue is being careful and not thinking that you're immune from any accountability on the road, just like anybody else. The idea that some towns aren't really enforcing this, though, Paul, is scary. No helmets. Some of these like electric scooters doesn't even require you to even insure the vehicle or the apparatus. I mean, it's tough to call it a vehicle, but to insure the apparatus, all the things you should do, register it. It's mind-boggling to me.
Here's a question I haven't seen anybody cover, which if the media were doing their job, they would look into. Who's going to pay for his medical bills? Does she get his medical bills even though it was his fault? Bicyclists don't have insurance. If he has a car, he would have insurance that would cover him. But if by admitting, stopping and admitting to this crash, she's putting herself in for a lot of medical bills, maybe it was a good idea to not stop. I mean, I can't really say you should never leave a scene of an accident because I used to drive around Mexico a lot, and that's what everybody does. It happened to me twice,
Sure.
People ran into me for various reasons, and I had insurance, but I wasn't going to stick around, and neither was the other guy. Everybody just goes. It's not so sacrosanct like it is here,
Yeah, again, it's a really scary scenario. And again, what's made this issue worse is, again, if it was just simply he took a red light, which he did, she didn't stop. Again, obviously, there's still people going to take sides on this. But what makes I think the story even more interesting and even more tragic, though, Paul, is the idea that, again, we're seeing more footage coming out, taking 6 hours to report it. And again, I'm not piling, I'm just reporting the facts. Okay. And she waited 6 hours. That's only going to prompt people to be even more egregious now and say, well, let's speculate. Why did it take 6 hours? But then now we're seeing footage from a towing situation that happened in Hoboken last year. And that makes it even worse because now people feel even more emboldened to really crucify her. And I just think it's unfortunate. Again, I'm always just about let the process play itself out. Let's see what happens with her. Let's see where this goes. But this continuing piling on, it just seems that it's very sanctimonious and self-righteous, though, Paul, by a lot of people, especially some of our councilmates that we know don't identify with her ideologically. People also ideologically locally that don't identify with her, that tend to vilify her, again, because she's the daughter of the county executive. It just seems like it's open season on her. And I feel bad. I'm sorry. I'm a human being.
And the problem she had with her car getting towed because of the overdue registration, that happened to Chris Christie. He talked his way out of it. But once he got elected, I wish he would have had a little more sympathy for the common man and said, gee, you know, why do we need to tow your car just because your piece of paper is a little old? I mean, give the guy a warning and say, do it right away. I mean, now, if this happened to her last year, it was in the midst of the whole COVID hysteria. It was difficult to get any motor vehicle, work done, right? So it's easy to forget to send. If you forget to send it in, they never send you a letter and say, gee, you better send that in. They wait until they stop you and tow your car. Now, you miss your mortgage payment, they send you a note in the mail, you better pay your mortgage. They don't come and take your house immediately. I mean, this stuff could be easily handled, and it's a bureaucratic boondoggle. I mean, I'm sure with her registration, right? What's the cost to register your car? $39. She's not trying to beat them from the $39,
Absolutely. And I think, again, this is where it's going to get interesting. People are just going to pile on and say, well, is this privilege? Is this her perhaps not taking responsibility? Things of that nature. Again, Paul, I haven't commented because, again, she's a friend of mine. I'm just trying to talk about, I think, in an objective manner where I'm not piling on. I'm just trying to have a conversation that is, at least to the best of my recollection, being as objective as possible. And I think people are losing sight of that, especially in media, whether it's, again, and I don't care about calling them out because they don't like me, I don't like them. David Cruz and others that seem to be piling on her, and I think unnecessarily because, we're not perfect. We're humans. Again, I think it's easy to pile on just to get traffic and clicks and views, Paul.
Well, what got my attention was, I was just reading the headlines. This woman this woman went away from an accident and all these things happened. And then, okay, the video comes out. I look at the video. I expect to see her blow through a red light and hit the bicyclist, right? I expected her to be drunk and, but then I turn on the video and I'm like, here comes the bicyclist. What's that? He's going through a red light. And then you look, he passes 2 stopped cars. Now, he might have somebody's got to ask him, what were you thinking? And by the way, he was delivering for Uber Eats. Somebody should get on with Uber Eats, and say, what's your policy? Do you let your riders run red lights? I wanted to ask him if he hadn't hung up on me. How many times have you run red lights? I mean, this was like, actually, hate to bring up Mexico all the time, but one time I'm down in Mexico driving along and a dog comes out to chase my car. And, that happens all the time, right? Well, this dog just keeps running until it runs right into my car door. I was like, my first thought was, this dog must have been chasing cars for years, and it finally decided to run into mine. It's like, and I thought it was the same thing with this guy. It's like, how many red lights? You're probably running red lights every day. I mean, could he tell you with a straight face he doesn't run red lights? This was a one-time occurrence? Okay, good. Let's hear it, But somebody should ask him that, because if he didn't run the red light, the whole thing doesn't happen.
Exactly. It just seems like, and let me be very clear, because people are going to say, well, Fernando's taking the side of Amy. He's trying to absolve. I'm not trying to absolve anybody. What I'm trying to just is talk about this objectively. And it seems, Paul, like you were the only one that did it succinctly in your column. So kudos. Again, we'll see what happens. We'll let this process play itself out. I know that I believe the next council meeting in Jersey City is, I believe, August 15th. Our caucus meeting, I think it's the first caucus meeting in August, and then I know the regularly scheduled council meeting is 2 days later on the 17th. That should be a very lively council meeting, to say the very least, in the middle of August.
Well, by then, someone else in Hudson County will have done something really stupid.
True.
And this will get knocked out of the news.
You know what? That's true. And again, some of the people that are really piling on her are a lot of progressives and leftists in Hudson County that don't like her because, she doesn't subscribe to their brand of politics as a Democrat. I'm sure one of them will do something, because progressives always seem to make an ass of themselves. And you're right. I think in the next 2 weeks, somebody else will do something in Hudson County, maybe to alienate themselves. And maybe, at least for the most part, some of the heat on Amy might subside. We'll find out. Again, my heart goes out to her. I feel bad. It's one of those mistakes that happen, and I'm glad nobody was hurt. But now it seems like, someone's political career could be on the line. And I think that is where, at the cusp of this, I think this is where maybe the plot will thicken.
Well, maybe, Bob Menendez will sell another row home for 4 times its value because he switched the zoning,
I'm not touching that one. I'm not touching that one. That's funny. So, Paul, another good column by you, again, and this was a couple of weeks ago. I know you published one a few days ago, which I get to, but this one really caught my eye because I am a dues-paying NRA member. I believe in the Second Amendment. I love to go shooting for practice, and it's very therapeutic. But your column was titled, and folks, again, check out Paul on the Star Ledger at NJ.com also, and also on his Twitter feed at Mulshine on Twitter. But you wrote, New Jersey's under the gun after that Supreme Court decision on the Second Amendment. I'll just read the first couple of lines here for our audience to understand really the point you're making here. If I might indulge in the sort of cliche that our governor loves to employ, this looks like the calm before the storm. I'm talking about the storm of cases that will be filed over New Jersey's firearms laws in the wake of the U.S. Supreme Court's Bruen decision. The first wins from that storm came on June 30th, when the U.S. Supreme Court vacated a ruling in Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs versus Brooke. The clubs had argued that New Jersey's ban on large magazines violates the Second Amendment. The appellate court originally rejected the argument and ruled the ban constitutional. But everything changed last month when the High Court issued its ruling in the New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. By a 6-3 margin, the court ruled unconstitutional New York's policy of issuing gun permits only to those who can prove a justifiable need. Again, for everybody else, read the column. It's really, really well done. But Paul, you know what? This is what's interesting. New Jersey, arguably next to New York across the river by me, probably has the most draconian drug laws for some time, but gun laws that we probably anywhere on the East Coast, maybe anywhere in the country. Certainly this governor has not helped because of how stringent he wants to make it and how impossible he wants to make it for law-abiding firearms users in New Jersey to obtain a firearms ID. But I think that this Supreme Court decision is going to open up a lot of litigation. And the acting attorney general, I think, might have to make a decision at some point, Paul, in my opinion, about where this is going to go, because at some point it's going to be a clutter of litigation.
Yeah, and I think that what the gun control people don't understand is that the only way to enforce gun laws is to throw people in jail. It's not, it's not saying they would say, well, let's ban quote unquote assault rifles. Well, that's great. It's not like wave a magic wand, they all go away. When you say that, you say, let's put people in jail for put just the mere possession of, and in New Jersey, lots of people have been sentenced to 5 years or more in jail for having an unloaded, registered firearm locked in their trunk, which is absolutely unthought of in other states. And so a lot of this stuff is going to get knocked out, and it should be. It's not, like I said, you got to throw what gun people understand is the only way they can do this is by throwing you in jail. They act like it's some sort of just, this great government decision and the guns magically disappear. Well, they don't. People go to jail. And, I think everybody in the gun community is like, if somebody misuses a gun, they go to jail. But simply possession, it shouldn't be any, nothing at all.
Absolutely. And what's really mind-boggling to me, though, Paul, and folks, if you're just joining us right now, Paul Mulshine, the great columnist from the Star Ledger, joins us here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV on YouTube, and also on Facebook Live via StreamYard. We're trying to get that technical problem fixed, so bear with us. But Paul, you raise a good point there, and I'll even piggyback off of it, where it just seems like Trenton, for years in the legislature, obviously with this governor now, they've been very tone deaf when it comes to firearms. They just think, well, you know what? We tighten, gun ownership laws in New Jersey. We make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to get firearms. That's going to immediately eliminate the gun violence problem. And it's just tone deaf because, again, whether you live in, I don't care how this sounds, if you live in dumps like Newark or Elizabeth or the south side of Jersey City or Trenton, New Brunswick, Atlantic City, wherever, urban areas where, again, great police departments, not throwing shade at them. But you know what? Sometimes the response time isn't great. And why is the governor in this legislature so intent on making it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves? Hey, people might say, well, what's a couple of minutes? A couple of minutes can mean life or death for some people. And if you can protect yourself and your family and your home, Hey, and if you're legally able to and you're psychologically sound, what's the problem? It just seems like whether it's Murphy or across the river in New York with the New York governor or even Gavin Newsom, it just seems like, well, believe in the police and the police are there to protect you. But guess what? They may not always get there on time. While they all have armed security 24/7.
Well, also look at Texas. They get there on time and they stand in the hall with their 400 police stand in the hall doing nothing because they're more concerned with collecting their pensions than they are with protecting lives. And every time I see like my liberal friends, on Facebook or whatever, they'll find some instance of police brutality where a cop shot somebody he shouldn't have shot. And every time I'll always say, so why is it you think only the police can be trusted with guns? Because that's like the great liberal thing. They're going, well, we don't trust people with guns. We only trust the police. And then the police do something bad with a gun. And the liberals are, well.
And then they want to go defund, right? And then it becomes like, wait a minute, what are you talking about here?
Yeah, they got crazy with that stuff. I mean, I can understand people who would like to see only the police have guns, but the saying goes, when help is needed in seconds, police will be there in minutes. And look at that mall shooting that was interrupted in Indiana because the guy pulled out the gun and shot the shooter. Now, but I think that the Texas case, that wasn't the first time also in the Colorado case of about 20 years ago, the cops sat there. It happens a lot. I mean, there was another case.
I understand. And again, what really bothers me too is this. And listen, we're seeing school shootings every year now for some time, and I get it. It's a systemic problem. But what really bothers me, especially with my liberal friends and all my progressive friends and all the woke people that seem to think they have all the policy answers when they don't, the first thing that comes to my mouth is, well, listen, if we want to protect our kids in our schools, I mean, there's a school district down the shore that I think they were trying to get it on their school board agenda about having armed guards at all the schools in their school district. We protect our courthouses, Paul. We protect our banks. We protect really a lot of institutions with armed security. I'm sorry. What's the problem with doing it at schools? I understand your point about the Texas issue and that tragic story.
Well, by the way, that's the problem. That was the school district police force. That's the really embarrassing thing. But my problem with it is it's an employment program. The NRA, Wayne LaPierre was pushing it because he's also tight with the police unions. And that's paying a lot of people to stand around doing nothing.
No, you're absolutely correct. But the premise, and I always say, listen, what's wrong with protecting our school buildings with armed security? As if there aren't enough veterans, hopefully once they pass all the background checks and everything else, or retired police officers that maybe want to be able to still, be productive if they're physically able to. I don't get it. We, go to jury duty. There are questions everywhere.
No one ever asks is how come this never happens in Catholic schools? And I think the reason, actually having gone to Catholic school, usually it's some kid who was bullied who tries to get revenge on the people who bullied him. Now, in Catholic schools, they will put a cap on the bullying. And also in Catholic schools, they enforce the law. They don't need police because like the gym instructor or something will, But public schools, they're so paralyzed and they don't do anything about the kids getting bullied. And then, we in the media keep putting every school shooting up like it's the only story on earth. I mean, it's not that big of a problem, no matter what people say. It's,
That's right.
It literally goes viral when you start show one and some other crazy guy gets the idea, And as somebody said, and look at the movies. I mean, it's funny. They're all like for gun control, and then look at the movies. They got nothing but guns.
No, listen, you're absolutely correct. And it's mind-boggling to me, again, why this state continues to make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to be able to purchase a firearm, to have it in their home, to protect themselves and their families. When, as you said, again, this is not throwing shade at law enforcement. This is not being anti-blue or not believing in police unions. No, that's not my position. Is why not empower the citizen? Our legislators, our governors, both Republican and Democrats, forever, have armed guards at all times. It's good enough for the elitists, but it's not good enough for people like you and me, Paul. That's where the hypocrisy doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, that bothers me. Murphy's got, an armed guard all the time, and then he's Mr. Anti-Gun, and that's stuff but then he goes to his 30-room mansion in Umbria, Italy, and pretends he's a man of the people,
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't seem like a regular guy. I mean, but we'll get to the governor in a minute here. But another good column that I want to talk about that you published just a few days ago. And again, folks, if you don't follow Paul Mulshine on Twitter, please do so at Mulshine and check him out, obviously, on the Star Ledger page. Great columnist joining us tonight here on Real Talk. You wrote, "Is Donald Trump crazy like a fox or just plain crazy?" And you wrote in the opening passage, for everyone at home who doesn't have the article in front of them, in a recent speech in Florida, Donald Trump shared the news that while he was president, he wanted to award himself the Congressional Medal of Honor, but, quote, "they wouldn't let me do it." Sounds like something the 45th president would do. I mean, I'm honest enough to say, listen, I'm a fan of the guy in many policies. I'm not a fan of the person. I think I'm intellectually honest enough to say that. But some people like him. I mean, I like him too, don't get me wrong, but I can understand why he rubs people the wrong way. Something like this certainly adds to it. Perhaps because that medal is only given to war heroes, a majority of whom receive it posthumously. Then there was this call to the Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly to throw out the results of the 2020 election, even though it occurred 20 months ago, and there's no conceivable mechanism for doing so. Is he nuts? Or is this all part of a smart defense strategy? It's hard to tell with the Donald. Fortunately, here in the New Jersey, New York area, I can get answers from plenty of experts on the subject of Trumpology. That's a really, really good sentence there. One is Ray Lesniak, the former state senator from Elizabeth, recalled that back in the 1990s, he got invited by South Jersey political boss George Norcross to play golf with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, where Norcross was a member. We don't know if he still is. We can always find that out. Quote, "He was a very personable guy, incredibly personable guy," said Lesniak of the Donald. "But he was a bit obsessed with himself and his holdings. At lunch, he said to me, 'Look at this clam chowder. No one has much clams in their chowder.'" Lesniak recalled, "He thinks he's all powerful and smarter than everybody. Too smart for his own good, apparently." Yesterday, the Washington Post reported that the Justice Department is investigating Trump's actions, quote, "as a part of its criminal probe of efforts to overturn the 2020 election results." Folks, you can read the rest of the column. It's brilliantly written. You definitely check it out from Paul Mulshine. Paul, when I read this, the first thing that comes to mind is I think Trump, can be an evil genius at times. He can be very fanatical, very self-absorbed. I'm at least intellectually honest enough to say that. But by the same token, I think that the outrage by many on the left in New Jersey, in the media here, take your pick, NJTV, NJ Spotlight News, Insider NJ, NorthJersey.com, your colleague, Tommy Boy, I call him all the time, Tommy Boy on the show, Tom Moran, seems to be obsessed with the 45th president. I get it, Paul. What happened on January 6th last year, for the record, I'll say it again, was wrong. It was, whoever participated in a violent mob should be prosecuted. That's not my issue. My issue has always been consistent. It's not me drawing an equivalence here, because many on the left will say, "Oh, Fernando's just making excuses." I'm not making excuses. I just want you to be as outraged as you should have been 2 summers ago when the left side of the aisle was looting cities, vandalizing courthouses. Okay, people want to talk about storming the Capitol, vandalizing courthouses in multiple states, vandalizing public and private property, all in the name of, racial justice, to, again, what I've said, to commemorate a career criminal. That I don't care about saying that publicly. I'll say that. Not one bit of outrage, though, Paul, 2 summers ago. I get it. People will say, "Fernando's making a false equivalence." No, I'm not. Be equally outraged or not at all. But don't pick and choose when you want to be outraged.
Well, yeah, but what bothers me from the Trump perspective, and it's just plain stupid, is that was always an issue that was associated with the Democrats. And then here he goes and endorses a riot where they try and break into the Capitol, which is 100 times worse than anything those mobs did. I mean, you look at this. I mean, this idiot today who was sentenced, he's going in there with a big shield and a baseball bat. I mean, it's like, and Trump said, "We love you, that you're my people." I mean, but you got to be crazy. That's the thing. That's why I think he is doing a lot of this crazy stuff, because if he goes to trial, he wants to say, "Well, I believed that. I really believed I won the election." If a jury is convinced it was just a cynical move to try and steal the election, then he'll be convicted. But if he can convince a jury, like, "No, I really thought I won, and I still think I won," as wrong as that may be, it's a much better defense. And it could be true because he's not that smart. I have friends who worked with him, and he's not all that quick. He's an awful administrator. He just happened to be good at making these deals.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ripped everybody. When you talk to people in Atlantic City, he just, would hire people for something. And like my friend had a security firm down there, he'd hire his security guards, for a month. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the month, he'll say, "Oh, what did I tell you? I'll give you half what I told you." And what are you going to do? Sue him? Like get in line with everyone else who's suing him? So, he's no hero. It would have been nice if when he lost the election, if he had just said, "Okay, I'll be back next time," he'd be in great shape, but he's really in trouble now. I mean, I think that the Georgia prosecutor might go after him. And I think the pressure's on for the feds to go after him. And that's going to be tough for him because he doesn't have much of a defense. He did all this stuff,
No, listen, Paul, fair points. And I think that part of the reason that there seems to be this insistence and expediency to either seek indictments, whether it's in Georgia, whether it's what's going on in the commission in Washington, which, by the way, just seems to be insufferable to watch at times. The amount of virtue signaling by people like Adam Schiff and others where, they spent 3 years with nonsense, whether it was the Russia, collusion nonsense that didn't amount to anything. We all know it didn't. People on the left swear up and down about it, or what got him impeached not once but twice. We can debate that forever. But the mystery I would see here is that it seems like there's an insistence to make sure that he can't run in 2 years. And okay, if that's what the left and that's what Democrats in Washington want, okay, that's push your chips in the middle of the table, show your poker face, and do that. I would just argue that maybe Donald's time has come and gone. Warming up in the bullpen is someone like Ron DeSantis, who former Navyman, former sailor, distinguished governor, got it right with COVID. All right, unlike blue governors like Cuomo, when he wasn't fondling women, Gavin Newsom when he wasn't eating out at ritzy restaurants in Napa Valley, or the governor here or in Connecticut and Pennsylvania that they got it wrong. And it seems like Ron DeSantis warming up in the bullpen should scare people on the left more because, hey, you can go after Trump all you want. That's fine. There's a lot of things to go after him interpersonally, and he has a lot of negative attributes. Now, but that's fine. However, they can't do that with Ron DeSantis, though, Paul. And I think that scares Democrats worse, where it's like, well, what do we do here? Yeah, we can indict or try to indict the 45th president, but we got a guy that could be the 47th president because the 46th president is so grossly incompetent.
Yeah, and DeSantis keeps going after things like this, the quote unquote "don't say gay" bill, where the liberals all thought they had him cornered, because he came out against teaching third graders about, anal sex. And then it got out to parents, and parents are like, wait a minute, you can't teach third graders about all the different kinds of sex, and it got crazy. The Democrats are so into their own arguments, they don't even know how crazy they're. Like some woman who's a lesbian, right? She says, this means she's a teacher, I can't tell my students about my marriage. And you're like, well, if you tell your student, number one, it's none of your students' business who you're married to.
Yeah.
But number two, if you said you were married to a woman, kids wouldn't even know. They don't even know who you're supposed to be married to. It's like it's just these crazy objections with these people, and all this transgender. It's transgender. Like that University of Pennsylvania swimmer who was a guy who was setting all these records. I'll give you an example. In the Olympics, Trenton's own Athing Mo, the high school senior who won the 800 gold medal, she's an incredible athlete. She ran a 155. Now, that's when I was in college, my roommate ran a 149 in high school. 155 is the world record time for a woman. For a guy, it's like a pretty good time. Not world beating, but the way most people look at it, look like you're cheating. Never mind your sexual identity and all that stuff. You're getting an unfair advantage,
Absolutely.
and they're so into their transgender equity stuff. Where when people start on it, I always go, do you know what a transgender male is? Is that a guy who switched to become a woman, or a woman who switched to be a guy? And I always forget. I'm always like,
I have trouble too, Paul. I have trouble too sometimes, because it just seems like the left and all the woke crowd are so insistent with their identity politics, and it's not just enough that they want to be accepted. It's like they want to force it down your throat and say, if you don't accept this, or if you don't acquiesce to our pronouns and everything else, then you're the bigot, you're the homophobe, you're the transphobe. It's sickening. It's insufferable. I mean, we see it with journalists. I go after them all the time, and it's, Paul, I'm sorry. And I'll just switch gears here for a minute, because it is an election year, and there are some competitive House seats here in New Jersey. And clearly House Democrats, where I live in Hudson County, it's as blue as Windex. So this is a House seat that's not going to flip. Nearby in Bergen County, Josh Gottheimer, again, a seat that's not going to flip. Most likely west of him, Bill Pascrell, another guy, probably won't flip. But west of him in Central and South Jersey, these are winnable seats for Republicans this year. And it's not like they can invite the president to come campaign for them. That could be even suicidal for them politically. But, if they want to campaign on this woke nonsense and pronouns and bathrooms, I could give two drops of piss about that. It's about empty grocery shelves. It's about inflation. It's about the fact that it's still too expensive to fill up your gas tanks, and people having to prioritize whether or not to take summer trips or how to get to work. Paul, that is what matters in this election cycle. Do you think Republicans in Central and South Jersey, in those races, do you think it's winnable? Can they flip those seats back to red?
Yeah, I think Tom Kean has a good chance, although he's not running much of it. Tom hates to say anything.
Yeah.
He tried. Well, he'll probably do pretty good. And I didn't know Gottheimer was unbeatable. Is he really unbeatable? That seat used to be.
Well, I mean, again, it's sort of, let's revert back to last November. I think what Democrats do really well statewide and countywide as well is they're able to register voters. They mobilize really well, going door to door. It's why there's 1.5 million more registered Democrats in New Jersey. But there's also this apathy among Republicans. And I talked about this on Saturday when I was at a Blexit conference in Cape May, where last November, only 39% of registered Republicans, Paul, came out to vote. If only so much as 5 or 10% more come out and stop being fickle and tribal, we're not talking about Governor Murphy. We're talking about maybe a couple more seats in the legislature flipping. Republicans need to stop being tribal. And that's what happened last November. They can't do that this November. Yeah, some Republicans may not like Tom Kean. He may not check off all your boxes. But what's the alternative? Tom Malinowski? I mean, really?
Yeah, they've really got to start pounding on this climate change nonsense, because when you're talking about, as they are, preventing any more gas connections, you're no longer going to be able to have a gas stove. You're not going to be able to have gas heat. Everything's going to be electric. You're not going to have a gas car. And we're going to get totally, I mean, look at the ridiculous position the president is in, saying we're going to get rid of all fossil fuels. And, oh, by the way, why aren't the oil companies pumping more oil? And they're hiding behind this thing. Well, there's a war in Russia. There's always going to be a war somewhere.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter, interestingly enough, no one in the liberal media ever really note this, but there's the Energy Information Administration, which is a federal administration that looks at energy issues in a bipartisan and in a nonpartisan manner. They predict that by 2050, oil, natural gas, and other fossil fuels are going to be at the same proportion they are right now. The politicians tell us we're going to cut off fossil fuels by 2050. Our own government tells us we're still going to be using them in 2050. Of course we are, because look at the problem. A little bump up in the gas tax, and they panic. They drop their whole ideology about, and if they were honest, and I think Buttigieg was at one point, he said, well, from our perspective, this is pretty good because it'll get people to get used to using less energy. But if they were honest, they would say this is what it's going to be like. This is the future. But the minute there's any panic, and this is going to happen forever. I mean, you start. In New York, they cut off new gas connections in certain parts.
Paul, what bothers me about that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it seems like, and I heard Buttigieg's comments over the weekend. I've heard people in Trenton talk about this, and even in the mainstream liberal media, where even in the Washington Post, there was this asinine column last week where, do we really need air conditioning? I mean, even someone on CNN said that. And what's really myopic and tone deaf about all the climate hysterics and all the Green New Deal fanatics is that, does anybody just care to do a little reading? Where, guess what? To charge your electric car is going to consume more electricity than what your air conditioning does, Paul, because it's on the same grid. And
right.
People just, it's mind-boggling to me how tone deaf those on the left are, as if we don't need air conditioning. Yeah, we do. It's sort of like trying to tell us how to, it's almost like, well, the governor wants to tell you, well, yeah, we can give you a $4,000 rebate if you purchase a new electric car. Here's a newsflash for everybody. The MSRP on a basic electric car is $50,000. Try selling that to brown and black working class people, Paul, in New Jersey and across the country, which is the base of the Democratic Party. They can't afford that. It requires a credit check. It requires financing. And guess what? I'm not trying to be mean-spirited here, but for a lot of working class people, those are things they cannot do. So yeah, don't rely on gas. Just get an electric car. Again, it's the elitist telling you that they know more than you do when you know they wouldn't do that.
Not only that, these electric cars weigh about 2,000 more than regular cars.
Maintenance.
That means not just maintenance, BTUs. The number of BTUs needed to move an electric car, move all that weight, has to be considerably more than a gas car. Yep. Now, that electricity has to be generated. Those BTUs have to be generated, and they're using often fossil fuels. The same liberal environmentalists who are telling us we have to get fossil fuels also wanted to shut down the nuke plants. They want to shut down California's last nuke plant, even though they have no substitute for it. It's just, there's no source of energy. These people are really kind of back to nature freaks who think it's all going to be fine, but it can't work. It's just, it's not that it should or shouldn't work. We better hope they're not right about CO2 burning up the world, because we're not cutting CO2. It's not happening.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Paul, before I let you go, you've been a gentleman to come on with me tonight. I know you've had a busy day. Again, I want to thank you for your time. You're such a gentleman. I think I had a really good time here with this conversation. I definitely want to invite you back on later this fall. You're one of my favorite columnists. You make a lot of sense. And again, no disrespect to your colleagues, but you're one of the few people at the Star Ledger, in my opinion, that make a lot of sense. So that's why I enjoy your columns. I certainly, again, enjoyed our time here. Look forward to having you back on this fall to dissect the midterms as we get closer to November. I'll give you the last word here on Real Talk.
Oh, well, just thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun. And as long as this state remains crazy, my job will be easy.
Well, you know what, Paul? The left gives us a lot of material, both for you to write about and for me to ridicule about. So, folks, he is Paul Mulshine, distinguished columnist for the Star Ledger. You can check him out on Twitter at Mulshine, also at muckrack.com. You can see all of Paul's wonderful columns there. Make that bookmark it. Make it a point to read Paul Mulshine on a regular basis. I sure do. He's our guest tonight here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Paul, God bless you. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you soon here on Jersey First TV.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, Paul. Have a good night. Folks, great show here tonight. We did have some difficulties with Facebook on StreamYard as well. I am currently serving a 3-day suspension. 2 days. It's 2 days left on a 3-day suspension. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg and all the idiots in Silicon Valley in California seem to think I violate community standards. I mean, Jesus. I can't wait until Republicans win the House and maybe kind of hold big tech accountable in 2023. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but these tech companies are just out of control. But I'll be back on Facebook in 3 days, right? I still have my backup account, so you can follow me there. I'll be publishing this episode once we go off the air. Obviously, you can check it out on the Jersey First Facebook page and also on YouTube. And again, I want to thank Paul Mulshine for coming on the show here tonight. A lot of good topics to talk about, and make sure you read them. He's one of the few people I can actually stomach at the Star Ledger, so make sure you check him out when you can. Folks, it's that time of the show. It's this week's winner of bad journalism here. And who is the worst journalist in the state of New Jersey? Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's a repeat offender, and you shouldn't be surprised. But yes, it is coming from Insider NJ. What a surprise there. We all know we've become accustomed to bad journalism, and I can always rely on my smartphone going off with a text or DMs from many friends of mine on social media and in politics. People who work behind the scenes. They'll say to me, hey, Fernando, check this out. And I almost always know that when I see the text prefacing with, hey, Fern, check out this nonsense or check out this BS from so-and-so, so-and-so, I already know it's from Insider NJ, because consistently that's what we're getting from Insider NJ. So shame on the Graham family. They got to do something over there. Either, I don't know, have a sit down with Max, have a sit down with Pete, because all they're doing is just peddling propaganda over there. But the latest piece of propaganda, and this was really, really good. Last week, over 10 people texted me a link to their recent power list. And I'll tell you, folks, the recent Insider 100 Policymakers 2022 list, I'll tell you, folks, if you need some comedy, if your baseball team isn't doing too well this season, maybe as the NFL is 6 weeks away and maybe your team has no hopes for the upcoming year, do me a favor. Just read the latest power list at Insider. And I again, when this was brought to my attention, and people sent me certain screenshots because they were like, wow, Max has really outdone himself here. And again, folks, it's as I say all the time, you know, Max Pizarro is this guy who, quite frankly, you know, if I had any respect for the guy, you know, that has subsided. Because Max, you've gone from just being a bad journalist, okay, to now you're just a bad person, because you're openly and willingly peddling propaganda that is lacking in facts and is misleading. Now, I don't know about you. I get it. You live comfortably wherever it is down the shore. You make six figures. I get it. You're riding horses in your spare time, or your horses are riding you. I don't know. That's not my business. But the idea that you put out some people on this power list here, this is really hysterical. So I wanted to share this with you at home, folks, so you can have as much of a chuckle as I did. So at number 19, he has the treasurer of New Jersey, Liz Muyo. Now, again, you can check out the power list. I have it behind me there. But I'll just read you some things here. An LD-15 assemblywoman from Pennington prior to going to the Murphy administration, Muyo argued the benefits of the historically gigantic federal surplus assisted $50.6 billion budget for FY 2023 fiscal year. Well, you're being very kind. Federal surplus as assisted, surplus assisted. Quote, since our first days in office, fiscal responsibility has been a guiding principle. 4 years later, we've received 2 of only 4 credit rating upgrades that the state has been since the 1960s. Going into this year's budget, the governor made it clear we needed to continue on this path by building our surplus even higher. More on how that surplus came about in a minute. Reducing our debt even further, that's not true. Meeting our obligations, well, to some extent, maybe with pensions. And delivering tax relief. Really? I haven't seen any. I'm a homeowner. I'm a motorist. I haven't seen any. And that is exactly what we have done. Max, again, you're willingly and blatantly misleading people. Well, we all know anyone. Again, you know, Max, again, it takes just a little bit of reading comprehension, okay, to understand that when it came to the surplus that is in Trenton in the Treasury, okay, that didn't come from buckling up your pants, cutting wasteful spending, or cutting out departments in New Jersey, or cutting out fat from the budget. That was borrowed and also came from federal tax dollars. So yes, you got it partially right, but why don't you crucify the legislature and the governor on the fact that that surplus is based on borrowing? So we're kicking the can down the road. Tax relief, where? The gas tax is still in effect. Okay. Responsible spending. We're still putting money into a legal fund to help illegals get representation in court from being deported. That's responsible spending? And you won't call it out? Again, Max, we already know you're a bad journalist. You're actually a garbage journalist. But now you're showing us you're a garbage human because you're willingly deciding to mislead people. Shame on you, bro. You should know better. You're a man in his mid to late 70s, and you should know better. Here's an even better one. Number 24, Christina Tan, right? The state epidemiologist, excuse me. Tan represents one of a handful of individuals in the vicinity of New Jersey politics who actually radiates educated. Really? Handful? There's one right here, Max. There's plenty others. I don't know. Do you also need like an eye check? I mean, I don't know what your vision plan is like with Insider NJ, but get your eyes checked. There's plenty of us out there. How's this for an academic resume? An AB in history from Princeton in 1982, an MD from Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, an MS in public health from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and a residency in internal medicine / primary care at the NYU Medical Center. Of course, you seem to sort of conflate the previous entrant here, talking about the state treasurer, talking about the budget. Well, what is it? Is she a woman of medicine or a woman of macroeconomics? Make up your mind. I mean, how long are you working on this? I mean, did when you rode your last horse, did the horse kick you too hard? Or did you fall off when you were riding? I don't know. I mean, make a decision. Either she's a woman of medicine or a woman of macroeconomics. Give me a break. Oh, here's a good one. Number 27. One of my favorites here, folks. Yes, it's Bobby Henley. Oh, my goodness. Bobby's World. Bobby's World. One of journalism's prized possessions. According to who? Stevie Wonder? Investigative reporter Henley has occupied a relentless forward position. You know what that means? Progressive, left, intellectually bankrupt. What else is new? On every major issue of our time. Jesus Christ, don't make me laugh, Max. From housing to healthcare, from education, economics, really, and social justice to voting rights and labor. A specialist in drilling down into the core of where real people live and work. Really, Max? A guy who's a climate hysteric, a guy who's a January 6th hysteric, a guy who doesn't really never gets it right on economics or anything else, but he knows where real people live and work. Really? Henley gathers his materials on the ground to unleash the toughest, most uncomfortable questions on those at the top of the ivory tower power chain. It's funny about him wanting to unleash the toughest, most uncomfortable questions when I'd like to do that of him, but oh, that's right. Bitch boy Bobby, just like bitch boy JJ, have me blocked on social media. So really, how hungry are they to really get to answers? Yeah, they like to hear the sound of their own voice or see the ink of their own writing, but they don't want to hear anybody else's. So really a joke here, Max, to put Bobby Boy on this list as high as you did. Let's move on to Joe Doria. Oh, a Hudson County legend here. And you put him as a Speaker Emeritus. The former Speaker of the General Assembly, former Department of Community Affairs Commissioner, and former Mayor of Bayonne remains Hudson County's leading, and in parentheses, only question mark, intellectual on policy matter. Now, there's plenty of us, again, starting with yours truly. All right, but you're a little too dense to know that. Max, again, in your old age, maybe the facts escape you. Well, we jest. No, you don't. You actually meant that. Actually, there are others. Former State Senator Bernard Kenny, for one, and well, we trust that they're out there. Yeah, there are plenty of us out there. Again, yours truly, I demonstrate every week on this show. You mean Joe Doria, who had the FBI raid his house in 2009? Is that the Joe Doria you're talking about? Right, Max? Okay. And I get it that he was exonerated because apparently 46 other people faced indictments and convictions. But, folks, here's a newsflash. When the FBI raids your house, that's not a good sign. So I don't know about that, having him this high there, Max. But again, to know these things and to write responsibly requires that pesky four-syllable word that you're always lacking, integrity. I know it's a stretch for you. Let's move on here. Some of these other winners here on this list. Number 32, Sean Spiller, the president of the New Jersey Education Association. Thank God that this passage was short. The president of the powerful NGEA also serves as the mayor of the People's Republic of Montclair and all the other bougie people that live there, and continues to generate buzz as a possible 2025 gubernatorial candidate. How, Max? In what world? On what version of Earth? Earth 5, the Earth in Avatar, the Earth where Kong versus Godzilla was predicated on. This is a guy whose union is openly looking to push curriculum that feels it's okay to teach gender identity to 5-year-olds. Why not let kids grow up organically? But this is a guy who's at the top of the food chain as the president of the NGEA, and somehow someone you hold in high regard as a policymaker. How? Teaching transgenderism to 6-year-olds? I mean, really? This is what you call good policymaking? Again, Max, you continue to disappoint as always. Here's another interesting one. Number 35, Charles Boyer, the founding director of Salvation and Social Justice. My God, could you think of a more insufferable name? Actually, you can. More on that later. now the pastor of the Greater Mount Zion AME Church in Trenton. The Reverend Pastor Boyer helms a powerful advocacy organization that harnesses the resources of the African-American faith community. Again, where is anywhere in here about policymaking? What's he doing? Is he trying to bring back prayer in public schools? What's going on? Like, again, what influence is he having in policymaking? Again, Max, you're dropping the ball more than your beloved New York Jets. I mean, it's as simple as that. Let's move on to number 39. Oh, there's a good one here. Amy Torres, the insufferable feminist who is the executive director at the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. Folks, that's just a long-winded name for a nonprofit that coddles illegals. That's all they do. Here's a good one here. Max has the audacity to write, Torres played a critical advocacy role during the 2020-2021 redistricting by advocating for greater political representation for key communities of interest. No, Max, what she advocates for is illegals, people here illegally. Again, when you look back there, again, in my extensive library from all my books from undergrad at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and then during my graduate studies at Rutgers, Newark, again, in there is a copy of the Constitution, okay? And within that glorious document, it talks about sovereignty and how it's the federal government's responsibility to ensure sovereignty, the preservation of borders, but you continue to glorify clowns like Amy Torres, a woman who's so intellectually bankrupt and economically illiterate that I wouldn't trust her to supervise a lemonade stand, okay? But somehow you want to put her up on a pedestal as someone that is representing key communities of interest. What, illegals? People sucking our resources in New Jersey and around the country? Illegals who are coming here, bringing their kids, overcrowding our schools, making classrooms even more difficult to teach for our overworked teachers. Is that the key community of interest, Max? Bro, do better. Stop coddling and glorifying groups like this. You should know better. Then again, as I mentioned, it takes integrity, Max. We all know you don't have any. Or here's a good one. Talk about the irony in this one. Number 47, State Senator. I'm sorry. This is. Did I have this wrong? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me. Yes. I'm sorry. David Bander. Okay. Wow. This guy looks like a barrel of fun at your local barbecue during the summer. I can only imagine. So the Bow-Tied Policy Office Executive Director at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, another long-winded title for more big government, former Chief of Staff to Senator Linda Greenstein, offers the whole package of policy and political expertise, one of the brightest minds in the state, about what, labor and workforce, about the fact that the Department of Labor and what could have been done better during COVID and how poorly run it was, or maybe be more proactive about how to improve the workforce. Really? Again, I'm trying to figure out here, what, other than wearing nice bow ties, any guy can do that. What exactly can you mention one policy, Max? Can you at least cite something? So at least because we can't take you at face value, Max, because you're blatantly dishonest. So at least if you give us something of substance, we can at least go with that. But again, you're choosing not to do that. All right, let's get to number 47 here. State Senator Shirley Turner. Yes. What were you doing? This is great of Max. This is rich. What were you doing as insurrectionists tried to bury the country? While idiots wearing Confederate flags stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2020, the former chair of the Senate Education Committee continued to press forward with legislation to prioritize civics education. That's really rich, Max, because if anyone really needs a civics education, it's you. Because again, as I mentioned, I can gladly mail you a copy of the Constitution. You can read about the Bill of Rights. You can read about the 10th Amendment, which again is predicated on federalism, and about states' rights, because you and the rest of the insufferable writers at Insider NJ, well, maybe not Fred Snowflake. He actually doesn't get on my nerves. I like Freddie. He's a good guy. Unfortunately, he's sort of keeping back company by being around, insufferable people like Big Bitch Boy Bobby Hennelly and Little Bitch Boy Jay Lassiter, as well as yourself, right? And Christine Sloan. I mean, Jesus Christ, another clueless woman contributing to Insider NJ, right? But it's funny to me to talk about civics education when you're publishing columns and enabling propaganda, especially about the abortion debate, when here in New Jersey, again, reproductive rights are not under attack, okay? If a woman chooses to terminate a pregnancy, she can do that very easily, and it's very accessible for her, okay? Planned Parenthood gets millions in subsidies from Trenton and from Washington, D.C., so there's plenty of clinics around. So if a woman wants to terminate a pregnancy, there's no risk of that in New Jersey. She has full-blown access. For all the ladies during single girl summer making poor decisions based on alcohol and need that plan B Monday morning after 3 or 4 nights of successive drinking and bad decisions, well, guess what? They can get a plan B on Monday morning. That's not a problem either, right? So this hysteria about Roe and what it's going to do in November, no, there's no Rovember. There's nothing like that. Reproductive rights are fine. Don't worry about what they're doing in Kentucky and Tennessee and Alabama and Texas, because they don't worry about what we do here, okay? But again, Max would have more integrity doing that, but he doesn't. Again, it's that pesky four-syllable word, Max. And if anyone needs a civics education, trust me, I hope this bill advances, because I hope you're the first one taking a class in it. That's for sure. Let's move on here to some other winners here. And I say that term loosely. Oh, here's another one. Patrick Murray, the director of Mama University's Polling Institute. Murray has built his seaside operation into one of the country's most discussed and respected polling institutions. Really? When's Patty Boy gotten a poll right lately? Yeah. What happened last November? The governor's going to win in a landslide because he's so immensely popular. Yeah, that didn't work out that way. I was the only one that actually called that. And guess what, Patty? You know what? I don't have this polling mechanism. I have 2 eyes. Seems like yours are pretty lacking. You might want to get those glasses checked because you're not seeing the same things I am. So it's interesting, though. He makes squirm those same people who are comfortable sitting on their hands during the storming of the Capitol. Was Patty Boy still as squirmish when BLM rioters were looting cities and destroying courthouses and public and private property, right? And police stations, right? All because they were outraged about the death of a career criminal? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that, Patty Boy. You might want to have to get back at me on that one. Here's another one. Oh, here's a good one. Number 54, Shoshana Page, the senior policy advisor to Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, an inner sanctum occupant of Baraka World. Page is now is one of New Jersey's premier experts on urban issues at a critical time of growth for the city of Newark. What critical time? It's still a dump. Okay, you can put up condos or studio apartments all you want by the Prudential Center. Folks, Newark's a dump. Okay, drive north on Springfield Avenue. Drive north on Central Avenue. Okay, I mean, it's a dump. It's a war zone. Okay, I mean, really? What growth in Newark? Right by Prudential Center? Right by, I don't know, nearby Harrison by Red Bull Stadium? I mean, what growth are we talking about here, Max? Again, oh, here's another good one. Oh, this was my favorite. Number 57, okay? Joe Hayden, an attorney. Max starts off with, we're biased. No, really, Max? No, you're kidding. You and Insider NJ are biased? Oh, my God. Let me guess. What seems some, I don't know. Water, wet. Oh, horses riding you riding horses. The Mets giddy about a July championship. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of obvious too. At least you have the integrity to say we're biased because we've always known that. I just think it's kind of funny for you to sort of put it in writing. Hayden serves as Insider NJ's legal advisor. I don't think I trust this guy to represent me in a traffic stop, but that's another story. But the celebrated criminal defense attorney possesses one of the best legal minds in the state and has the moral foundation to match. I love this virtual signal here. During the civil rights era, Hayden drove down to Alabama to march at the side of Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, good for you, Joe. I don't know what to tell you, but some of your columns leave a lot to be desired. Now, as far as Insider being open about their bias, well, it took you long enough. We've always known it. It's just nice of you, Max, to finally put it in writing. Oh, and here's some good ones here. I sort of saved the best for last year. Number 77 and number 78. Here we go. 2 insufferable Latinas here in the state of New Jersey. Jessely, whatever her name is, De La Cruz, the executive director at the Latino Action Network, another virtue signaling left-wing think tank. De La Cruz focuses on systemic approaches to the prevention and treatment of sexual abuse and the healing of intergenerational trauma in families through the use of mindfulness-based psychotherapies, play therapy, and multi-systemic family therapy. Again, how does this have to do with policymaking, Max? Unless you're just plugging one of your friends, which is fine. We can plug friends all we want, but at least be open about it. I mean, what this has to do with policymaking or being a policymaker. I don't know. Seems like she's doing some very, very good stuff. But again, what has to do with policymaking? That's maybe it's, I don't know. Get back to me on that one because you haven't defined it. But here's the really funny one. Number 78, Patricia Campos Medina, the executive director. Check this out right here. The most long-winded, insufferable left-wing nonsense you'll ever hear. Of the Worker Institute, the School of Industrial and Labor Relations at Cornell University. No critical Latino issues move in New Jersey without the input of the good doctor, who proved a particularly potent force in securing driver's licenses for non-citizens, for illegals, Max, for illegals. Get it right. Jesus. I get it. You're 70-something years old. Cognitively, maybe you're declining, but it doesn't take that. Pick up a dictionary. There's an app for it on your smartphone or on your computer. Come on. Now she's the host of Broken English Rise Up. Activista Rise Up, a substantive social issues platform. Yes, a boring-ass show with 10 viewers at the most, talking about, I don't know, left-wing ideas that have no merit in either or any sort of intellectual foundation in it. I've never, well, maybe Amy Torres. It seems like, Patty girl there, Patty Cash, as I like to call her, and Amy sort of run neck and neck for being probably the most economically illiterate and intellectually bankrupt women in New Jersey. Really, a substantive social issues platform. Max, I got to tell you something. I've watched that show, and I get it. She gives money to Insider to publish her episodes, to highlight her boring show. Folks, if you ever need a cure for insomnia, okay, I got two options for you, right? Don't believe that Dr. Uribe here is not a man of compassion. That he's not a man who wants to be helpful. So if you ever need a cure for insomnia, you can either look up any interview that Max Pizarro's done. That'll put you to sleep. I mean, it's like, and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm 3 minutes in and Max is still talking. Wow, that's how bad it is. But if you want an even more expedient cure to insomnia, then look up Patty Girl. Folks, it is the most insufferable collection of women that you'll see anywhere on media, okay? Whether it's insufferable feminists, okay, annoying cat ladies that you could tell that stink of cat piss, because I can smell the cat piss from here, from the home studio, here in the Uribe compound, okay? There's nothing substantive about this show, Max. The idea that you want to glorify a woman that is openly all about coddling illegals, about making sure that we give as much taxpayer dollars to illegals as Patty Cash, is reprehensible. I said it at the start of the monologue. You've already shown us consistently, and the body of work is out there, that you're not just only a garbage journalist, you're a garbage human being. By peddling this propaganda, by willfully misleading New Jerseyans and anybody else who reads Insider NJ, to think that whether it's Patty, Amy, or everybody else on this power list that I just cited, and mind you, I'll be fair, there's some nice people on that power list, people I respect. I don't need to ridicule them because they're good people. But the people I just cited here tonight makes you wonder, what exactly are they contributing to policymaking? And why are you glorifying them, Max? That's, again, another $1 million question. But it's not just about Max, because there are other people who are culpable and enable this, okay? There are willing accomplices to go along with the peddling of propaganda at Insider. And, of course, who comes to mind? Yes, Pete O'Nelia, its general manager. And I get it, Pete. You're happy making money. You're making money. You're making nice six figures, living in Hawthorne. Again, being the chair of the Hawthorne Democratic Committee while still being the general manager of a news site. How is, again, that not a conflict of interest? Again, having integrity would maybe merit you stepping down from one of those two things. But being both shows that you have no integrity. I'll gladly say that to you because I've been saying it consistently on this show. But the problem is that it's not just about these power lists and who's ranked where and what money you're taking from organizations for advertising. And I get it, Pete. I take money for advertising, okay, on my local podcast. So I'm not going to come on and look like a hypocrite because I'm not. But what I'm not going to be is someone that runs a podcast and then decides to run for a local committee seat for a particular political party. That's not going to be me. Again, I have too much integrity to do that. You don't care. Like, again, it's funny what money does to people. Once you make a certain amount of income and you're making high six figures, you're living in a very uppity town like Hawthorne, yeah, maybe you just forget what's right and what's wrong. Clearly, that's what's going on at Insider. So again, I'm just sort of issuing a plea right now to the Graham family. Have it come to Jesus moment with the lollipop guild. You know, little bitch boy Jay Lasseter, big bitch boy Bobby Hennelly, Sleepy Alan Steinberg, okay, Maxi Pizarro, and even have one with Pete O'Nelia. Sit them down and say, like, hey, have we lost our way here? Are we just happy peddling propaganda on a consistent basis? Like, is that what we want to be known as? Because that's what we are. Okay, folks, anybody with two eyes, anybody with above average reading comprehension, anyone that's cognitively functional can see that. It seems like everybody inside RNJ doesn't see what so many others see and what I see and what I project every single week on this show. Shame on you guys. You should know better. Max, you're in your mid to late 70s. Okay? Everybody else, you know, Jay's, he's in his 70s. Ali's in his 90s. Bobby's probably in his 70s or 80s. I mean, guys, you should know better. You're the elder statesman, right? Be a better example to younger journalists like myself that are trying to do good in this business. They're trying to maybe override the harm that all of you are doing. It's sad, guys. It's sad. I get it. Making money, you're happy doing that. But it doesn't mean your journalism is any good. So again, folks, when we think about bad journalism in New Jersey, again, we always think about Insider NJ. And they're always going to be consistently the winner here of the worst journalist every week on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. And again, by the way, since I'm always consistent and I want to make sure I show my solidarity for the hysteria about January 6th, guess what? I, too, remember January 6th when gas was under $2 and grocery store shelves were not empty. We didn't have an incompetent old man in the White House who's cognitively declining, a vice president who's as inept as it comes, and an administration that is ruining this country. But hey, you know what? That's how I choose to remember January 6th. It seems like the propaganda peddlers at Insider NJ want to do it differently. And that is our show for this week. Again, folks, once again, I want to thank, I'll have to get back to the our main picture here. Somehow here, back to the Jersey First logo here. There we go. Something with difficulties. It happens, folks. It's the internet. We're live, But again, folks, that's our show for this week. I want to thank the distinguished columnist from the Star Ledger, Paul Mulshine, for a very insightful conversation and certainly on a wide range of topics. His great columns, the current political climate, that and much more. Folks, as a special programming note, yes, I'm still on suspension on Facebook for 2 more days, thanks to Mark Zuckerberg and the evil that is Facebook. Hopefully, I'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be plugging the episode on my Facebook. You can check out my alternate page right now, Fernando Uribe Jr. I'm the handsome guy with the Joe Biden sucks t-shirt on there. You can't miss me. So I thank everybody for tuning in live here on Jersey First TV via YouTube. We were having some difficulties on Facebook. I'll make sure to correct that for next week's show here on the program. So again, folks, always make sure you tune in here and make sure you check out Jersey First on their website, www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, the number 1st.org. Make sure you like them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Jersey First, and make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at NoFilterUribe, and also make sure you like this show, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, on Facebook as well. It's still an active page. That one has not been suspended for violating, community standards, whatever that means. But I'll be back on Wednesday morning, so look out for that. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, and certainly the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate political commentator. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great rest of your week. Sharing is caring. Make sure you share tonight's episode on YouTube, on your social media. We appreciate that here at Jersey First. I'll see you next week, folks. And as always, thank you so much for watching.